Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by the VP of People and Talent, one of the most recognizable brands in the recruitment space today. Bringing with him well over 15 years of experience at Google and a further 5-10 years elsewhere. He's got experience scaling multiple teams across different regions, through different environments, through hypergrowth over and over. He's known for pairing high volume hiring with an obsessive focus on quality. And this is the reason, and many more, I'm sure, that secured him multiple awards, including the T100 back in 2025. If you speak with him during the winter breaks around the Christmas time, don't be alarmed by the very eye-watering jumpers that he sports. They're merely there just to spread the joy, but personally, I'm a fan of them. So when you're ready, grab your favourite tea or coffee if you prefer. And please do welcome today's guest, VP of People at Talent Ashby, Jim Miller. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Eden. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. And I also found out that you're a big Tractor fan now. I have to throw that in with the Christmas jumpers. But honestly, I'm super excited about the topic we're going to go through because I think it's one that a lot of people are curious more about. Before we get into that, though, there's a question, as I say, everyone gets at the beginning of the podcast. We're switching it up now for different seasons. So to fire at you, you're the first person to answer this. So let's see how it goes. So what scares you the most about the future of recruitment?
What scares me the most about the future of recruitment is the potential for technology to take away the interesting work, the problem solving, the continuous improvement, all of the things that I've got enormous satisfaction out of during my career. And I worry that the adoption of AI to do everything is going to take some of that away. Now, with any kind of revolution, there's always opportunity. So I'm hoping the opportunities are going to be there to go even further into improvement, continuous improvement, however you want to phrase it. But I'm passionate about that problem-solving piece, and I worry that elements of that are going to disappear as technology takes over.
Do you find, at least the technologies that are here today, that it's less about taking that part and more about the process rather, like the more mundane task? But do you feel that we're going to get to a route where someone's going to create this AI tool that people are going to lean far more into to do that side then? Is that the more fear that we're going to go down that route eventually once we've solved all of the scheduling processes, all of the, the filtering, all the automatic replies? We're going to have to go, well, what next?
Yeah, at the moment, the focus for companies like us who are doing it in depth is on assistive technology, taking away the administrative tasks, the repetitive tasks, and so on. A lot of the noise is about bias and selection from AI and elements of predictive AI. But I think the legislation and compliance, EU, UK, US, the States, that's hindering the development on those spaces. As we get to normalizing the appetite for AI within the legislative environment, that's when I think you'll start to see a real spike in innovation there. So that's the time that my worry might come to pass.
Yeah. Well, I think from your side, you've been through different waves of recruitment and acquisition, technological shifts and things like that. So it's an extremely impressive career. When you first started laying it out to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, you was the first Google tech recruiter hire in the London office. And obviously, back then they were a quote unquote small company, 8,000 people. But during your time, it scaled to something astronomical, 180,000, I think you mentioned, right?
Yeah. So, it was 20 years ago in a month or two's time. In fact, I chatted to my old boss just yesterday, and we were reminiscing back in those times. But yeah, I was the first individual contributor software engineering recruiter for Google London. At that particular time, there were no software engineers on the floor. There was one person in training in Mountain View who'd already been hired, and myself and my then boss helped build all of that out from scratch, and then a TA team kind of grew up around us as well.
Cast your memory back to those days. Why do you think it was, create like the idea behind Google coming to London with no one's there, no one's at that point at that element? What do you think they saw in London? Why actually come to the point of making an investment here?
they already had an office that was sales focused, and they had those offices dotted around Europe in different cities. But they were very intentional about their choices as to where they put engineering offices. In Europe at that particular time, they had Dublin, which is the EU HQ and still is today, and Zurich. And the philosophy, to generalize it, was they had three different ways of choosing a city. The first was because there was a competitor in that city who had engineers working on similar kinds of products, engineers who had the expertise they were looking for. So that was a pretty straightforward strategy. The second was that the talent market had something that was building it. In most cases, that was a school, a university. So Zurich, with ETH Zurich, that's a sensible strategy. One of the preeminent engineering schools in the world. You put an office there, you hire as many people who've graduated from that place and have stayed in the city or are graduating from that institution. And the third, which was interesting, was around people. And they would hire a figurehead, or they would buy a new company, and the person who led that company would become a figurehead. And they were an engineer of such renown that other engineers would gravitate to that location just to work in the same place on the same projects. And I think Aarhus in Denmark is a great example of that, with Lars and Casper, who the V8 engine behind Chrome and Dart, and people went to Aarhus to work with those folks. So that was their strategies. But Google London was a competitor play first and foremost. And this is all about mobile software engineering, mobile applications, mobile operating systems, long before iOS or Android.
Way back in the day.
That's how long ago it was. I joined Google before YouTube was part of Google.
Wow, fair enough. I mean, when you're looking at the competitor scope, I mean, let's focus in on that because that's what the original part was. What are the kind of the risks and the rewards, I guess, by saying, hey, there's a competitor we know here, let's go for it? Like the trade-offs between it, because when we talk about expansion, of course, we have to understand, is it worthwhile for the business long term? How are we weighing up what that trade-off looks like?
I think the first piece is, did they have a high enough quality to meet your bar? Google's hiring bar for software engineering was famously high in the early days. And 2006, when I joined, is only 8 years after the company was incepted and only 2 years after it went public. So the bar's incredibly high. There's lots and lots of interviews. You've got to do incredibly well to get through that. So there's a risk immediately that, yes, there's a competitor there. Yes, they've got engineers working on the kinds of technology that you want to work on, but are they of the right level of caliber and so on? That's the first piece. And then the second piece is that if you're going to make this successful and grow, then you need to be able to hire a diverse range of engineers from many different backgrounds and sets of experience and so on. So are there other industries, not companies, but industries that can support the volume of hiring you wanted? Obviously, with London being a city of the size it is, but it also had the investment banking area, which had incredible software engineers in it, a really strong media, old media and new media back then. Man, I'm using archaic terms. That's how we used to talk about the internet, new media. These types of companies out there that we could hire from and draw folks in from. Then it had the other elements of the strategies I'm talking about. So they hired an incredible figurehead to be the site director in Shanna Mayer, and then also the schools. So you've got Imperial, you've got Oxford, you've got Cambridge, all within range, and then hiring from the other fantastic institutions, both in the UK and across the European Union.
The element of institutions and the second capacity of saying, okay, is there like a feeder into the company, and take Zurich for example, does that lead down to the concept potentially that we're going to have a same type of environment at university, the same mentality of thought going straight into the company, and they've sat with each other during their theses or whatever, and obviously now they're building the same company together? Where's the diversity part come from if we're trying to find a location that is specifically graduating people that we're just going to try and cherry pick out of?
I think the concept is all about academic excellence, and these are big schools. So there's a lot of people, and they're certainly not hiring all of the graduates from each year from those schools. But these schools are of such international renown that their populations are incredibly diverse. in their own right.
Fair.
So ETH in Zurich attracts people from all over the world to go and study undergraduate, masters, and PhDs in computer science. It's that strong of an institution. So that's actually a positive, not a negative.
Yeah.
And yes, you've got particular academic schools of thoughts, but there's so many different departments, functions, and elements within that you can support the growth of your software engineering, your SRE function, and all of the other different elements of a typical software engineering department.
I think London is a nice example where you do have the schools, you do have the competition, sorry, and as you say, is a very strong place to attract individuals, which we'll get onto a moment. But there are obviously places that aren't exactly renowned for their schools that still could create these sorts of environments. So what I'm trying to share is the idea of expansion. Does it need to meet all the criteria, or could you go down the route of going, okay, we've got a wicked hire there who could attract more people there alone, and that could be enough to go down the route of expansion?
That's exactly the case. Where does that person want to be? You make it as ideal for them to join the company as possible. They join the company, and then you build branding around that to attract folks to create that awareness that we are hiring, but this is the location that you would need to be in order to work with this individual.
I think a lot of the people I get asked to hire for these days, and recording this beginning of 2026, right? So it is very much the schools, the pedigree, trying to find the next potential, hit hot candidate, shall we say, or hire, whatever you want to say. But then, attracting the ones that already meet that criteria is not always the case, especially when you don't have a brand or, the product is still in its infancy. So how realistic is it then to create a buzz around somebody?
If you hire the right person, they are well known enough within their field to do that. Google was blessed with a brand that was so strong they could hire multiples of those. When I first started, you could hardly walk down the corridor without seeing someone that was famous in their field for doing something. Even outside of software engineering, you had the best lawyers and the best of this or the best of that. So it was an incredible place to be. I think on my second day there, I heard a talk from a visiting employee from the US who turned out to have been named one of the fathers of the internet, Vint Cerf, and Google's chief internet evangelist. And this is early 2006, and he's talking about internet-enabled surfboards and RFID-capable wine corks, which was
still stuck with you today, which is the power of the conversation, I guess.
Exactly.
There is that element where you've got, Google is a nice example because, of course, we can all relate to knowing the brand. But as you say there, you've got the power to make that attraction.
Yeah.
Is it still realistic? Is it still as realistic for businesses to do this without that to try and attract those people in the field that are, the leaders or incoming leaders, and then try and create an expansion around that? Do you think it's still plausible to do in this market, in this age?
They're few and far between, but if your founders have got the right level of credibility, then yeah, they can go and talk to folks who are well known in their field. The open source community is really the place to look. If you think about going and trying to hire the original committers or the original instigators of certain pieces of open source technology, then yeah, you can build real followership behind them. And I've seen people's careers take off thanks to their open source work. I hired a particular software engineer in test once, and he went off and did a piece of open source work that has then built his career over the next 20 years. So that's the spot that I would be probably playing in. You find the open source technology that really aligns to your company and what you're trying to solve for as a product. Trying to hire the people who are known within that space, and others will come because of that, and your brand will get known at potentially the Reddit level rather than the national press level.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, fair enough. But the Reddit level is where, if you're hiring tech, for example, is where people are sitting more. I also try to encourage, especially like really early stage founders, the pre-seed side, build in public where possible. be open, be honest, and build a following, especially on, I'm going to still call it Twitter because I hate calling it X. It just seems a bit weird. Like on Twitter, like it's a really good platform to start getting that following. And if you're not then constrained to an office, you then start finding fantastic talent where you can hire completely remote or whatever, because they believe in what you're doing. And that's what you kind of just starts that initial idea of growing. So we've got obviously expansion as a business going into competitor for institutes that we can potentially hire from that has great talent or around a person. But you're at Ashby, and when you joined Ashby, it wasn't the brand that we know it to be today. It wasn't the product that we know it to be today. And obviously, we've got a completely different scenario going from Google to Ashby is chalk and cheese, right? Do you, as a business, follow those three methods, or do you kind of approach it differently?
No, not at all. Those three methods are for those companies that want to hire the best person in a postcode or in a zip code, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're listening to this. That's an office-based location strategy for hiring. We are an asynchronously remote company. We've always been asynchronously remote. We have a tiny little office in San Francisco where times when I've visited, I've been the only person in there. So it's not an office-based culture at all. And we've now got multiple hundreds of people in 25 different countries at the time of recording, which is an incredible spread. We hire the best people where we find them around the world for the jobs that we need them to do. But your point is around, well, how do you get those people to know about Ashby? And for us, it's been a strategy of extreme transparency. It's been a focus on the delivery of transparent information about who we are, how we work, our culture, our operating principles, how we communicate internally, the impact you can have whilst doing the work, the narrative storytelling style of our job descriptions, all interthreaded with deep SEO, search engine optimization, discoverability for our job descriptions. And the idea is that when someone lands on one of our job descriptions, you've got natural language for job titles, so they can immediately see what it is and what it's for, and to know whether they'd be interested in reading more. They start to read it and they're like, wow, I've never seen this level of transparency, so they keep reading. And that thread throughout starts talking about the impact they will have at the company, and great people want to have impact in their work. It doesn't matter who the company is. It's not a brand about the company, it's about the work that they'll do, the impact they have. We go as far to talk about why you shouldn't apply for the job. And this is something I've introduced from my agency days, pre-Google, when I worked in a software engineering recruitment agency in London. And we used to have to sell our candidates out of the job because we only ever put one person forward for each role. So if they hadn't committed to that position, that was our ISP as a company, if they hadn't committed to that role, and they backed out, that was the worst thing that could happen to you as a recruiter in the client's eyes and in your account manager's eyes. And I was a recruiter working with an account manager. So we'd sell the candidates out really hard. So I thought, well, why don't we introduce that as a level of transparency into our job descriptions? So we talk about the impact you can have, why you would want the role, why you wouldn't want the role. And then we've interwoven the stories of people in our team, both the work that they've done, but also their past, their backgrounds in adjacent technology fields. And the clever part of all of this is that every single element of this is interspersed with the keywords in a very contextual way. So it's not just a list of technologies. Every single element has its contextual place, so it doesn't feel out of place. But the discoverability of our jobs goes through the roof. So as a small company of 60 people when I joined, I think we had a couple of hundred applications in that first month, or the month before I joined. Rapidly, we're up into the thousands. And now we get tens of thousands of applications to work at Ashby today. We haven't really driven anything on true employment brand. There's no stories on our website about working here. You know, the ones where you video someone and then it's out a week or two later, that kind of stuff. That to me isn't a good use of capital to go down that pathway. But if you anchor it all within the job descriptions, you get the narrative right, discoverability right. LinkedIn, other job matching engines will pick up on this information. They will then match it to profiles who are potentially active in the market, and they will push your job description into the email inboxes of tens of thousands of people who might be interested in that role, rather than a sourcer who's in effect doing the same work, but they might be reaching out to 100 people a week and it goes into the in-mail inbox, which is full of noise, full of spam. That's the strategy. I've got a couple of other pods on it. And even if you go to Ashby's blog on recruiting, I've got a really long paper on how you can operationalize this kind of work. And this is stuff I learned at Google. I led Global Inbound for the last 6 years. I was there, 5 million applications a year, lots of data to test this kind of thing for. But as a small company with no employer brand and completely unknown in a space, we're building an ATS, right? That's our core product. Why would a software engineer want to go and do that? We've been able to hire some incredible technologists around the world to come and join that mission through this methodology.
Do you think the element that you are a fully remote first business as well builds that momentum as well? Do you think you could get the same, maybe not the same results, tens of thousands of applicants, don't get me wrong, but do you reckon you would still see a higher percentage, return on investment by doing an in-office or a, postcode search around it if you had the same mentality for deliverability, SEO, job descriptions? Do you think you'll still see an increase? Because again, a lot of people who are listening, I think, based on what I know, are mostly going to be more hybrid to in-office cultures.
Yes, you can see an impact from it, but you are restricting yourself to people who are willing to work in that postcode. And that's the difference. We have our operating principles. We hire frustratingly patiently as operating principle number 5, which isn't to say that we're slow on hiring, but we focus on quality above all else. It's a mandate to focus on quality for me as the head of people. We have access, therefore, to the entire world's talent pool. But if you say, no, we're going to only be in this office, or you've got to be there 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 1 day a week, people still have to be in range of that office in order to work there. So you've got the catchment area, and then you've got anyone willing to go and live there, to relocate to live in that location. That's the pool you're restricting yourself to. And I know folks might be listening, tens of thousands of applications, that's just noise. There's a whole bunch of other mechanics there to drive the quality from that, and we get incredible impact from inbound. But I would argue that the biggest impact, yes, is the remote nature of what we do and the ability to attract talent from anywhere.
So let's talk about that noise for a second, if that's okay. What are the signals that ultimately say that this strategy for this particular role is working? I mean, obviously the biggest signal, I guess, is going to be we made a hire, or the talent pool looks good, but the actual element of the deliverability of the SEO is working. It's reaching the right people. It's not just noise.
We source and we have employer referrals, and still 65-70% of our hires come inbound for software engineering roles. So, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
As a company, our growth has been astounding with the success we're having, our delivery cadence, the reception of our products from the TA community that we're launching. All of these things are testament to the strategy that we've got in place. And if you can drive 60-70% of your hires coming inbound, and they're of high quality, and you've got low attrition rates, and the product is being successful, why wouldn't you?
The transparency lever that you shared me a couple of job descriptions when we spoke the other day, and my first thought, and I shared it openly to you, was they're quite long. Not a bad thing, not that's what it is, but I really do like the fact that you do go down the route of this is what we do, this is what impacts. You say these areas that wouldn't work. The transparency part, was that always there when you joined? That was already there, or was that something you helped introduce? Again, I do find that sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to be over transparent, and they're like, okay, we'll just have the interview and talk to them then. So
no, it's very much from the founders, and Abik in particular, who leads our engineering function. It's funny, he talks, we have our own podcast, Offer Accepted, and Abik's episode, he talks about it really stems from him operationalizing the things that he found himself repeating all the time. So he's pushing what he's saying all the time into the written word, into job descriptions, into the emails and the documents that flow through to people who've applied. because it doesn't just stop with the job description. There are follow-up emails, there are follow-up documents that are shared at a regular cadence all the way through the process to draw people in deeper into the culture and understanding what it's going to be like to work here. We want people to have that clarity so that when they choose to work here, they're making the right choice and they're not going to leave. We dramatically reduce our attrition numbers through this. The whole web, the whole system is designed to be able to build a company as effectively as possible. Low attrition numbers are part of that. He had that mindset, started to push it. It became transparency because of this. We've extended it into the application questions. They are, in their own way, very transparent in order to gain clarity from the candidate as well. Adam Horn, who's runs open.org and very much a transparency proponent, uses our job descriptions as examples of this. And we've enhanced it over time, as I say, with the why you shouldn't apply as different things. And he talks about the mic drop moment for a candidate when they see a job description like ours, and it makes them read the whole thing. We've then had viral Reddit posts from people going, I've never read a job description from start to finish until today. This job description from Ashby. And they're posting it to not a forum about recruiting, but they're posting it to a forum for software engineering leaders in B2B SaaS companies. So guess what? We then get another few thousand
more inbound
leaders in B2B SaaS companies. Our exact profile that we're targeting for that job, now reading that job description and getting hooked in.
I also think that's part of, go chime in, it's part of Ashby's, obviously it's clearly a strategy, but you partner with so many different types of groups in different locations, and you just start to become familiar with what you guys do as a product. But the Reddit thing is what really caught my eye. When you told me that story the first time, I was thinking, that's a weird way to get more viral, it's a great way, and it's so different from what other people are doing. And then I reflect back on how old the company is, or how new the product is. Really, it's only, as you say, it's only several years old in regards to what you're doing today.
Yep.
And it shows a true testament to the impact of what I think sometimes people forget. It's not this incredibly large company like Google. It was a startup when you joined. I would class it now as a scale up.
Yep.
In that kind of respect, but you're still kind of pushing out, into so many different markets as if you're a huge company. So many people are aware of what the product's doing now.
We build openly, be it the software engineering side or even on our side from the TA perspective. We're out there challenging the ways of working. For argument's sake, the way that we've hired recruiters over time. The first recruiter role that I posted, I pre-posted a week beforehand saying, we've got a recruiter role coming open. It's going to open at this time next week. This is the core requirement we're after, fully remote. This is how much we're going to pay. All of this information in advance of the job being open. It's going to have an opening window from this date to this date. Please apply. We will review 100% of the applications. Don't rush your application. There are some application questions that it's critical you answer, because I'm trying to gather information that helps me really decide who I want to spend my time talking to. And that was 7 days before the job went live. And everyone came back, I had all these posts going, are you mad? You're going to get 10,000 applications. The way it manifested itself, yes, we got a few hundred, but every single one of those applications we had was a recruiter.
And they put the time in, you'd like to think about the questions, right?
Yeah, I had no waiters, no car detailers, no offense to any of those folks, but I didn't have anyone that was applying who couldn't actually do the job in some way at some level. And then I'm very lucky that I get to pick and choose folks who've had repetition of going through exactly this kind of work. They know what they're doing. They know how to have the conversations with the hiring managers and so on. I ended up making an incredible hire, Anna, who's still in our team. And you can go and listen to her podcast episode on Offer Accepted about what it's like to work with our hiring process, which is basically an exec search process for every single one-off role. And it's incredibly efficient, even though it looks like it takes a long time. But folks looking and like, Jim, with your network, with all of the recruiters and TA people you know, why are you not just hiring a referral, someone you already know? And that strategy is designed to hire the best person out there on the market, not just the best person I know, the best person somewhere in the world, not just the best person in a postcode. All of those different elements. It's to hire incredible people, and there's talent density and quality of hire and all the chatter about this stuff. But to build a company truly and intentionally, attract the best people, and then make it a fantastic place for them to thrive. That's how you build a successful company. So everything that we're doing is aimed at that.
The key word there, I think, is say intentional. It's not just we need a recruiter that's going to get one, but it's we want the best recruiter, and they've thought about it. I do imagine a lot of people listening to this, again, based on who I know, listen to it, are probably sitting there going, "I'd love to do that. I'd love to do it. Like I don't have maybe the right support from where I am today to move everything straight away, or they don't necessarily know what to do first." Or they might just be in a role where they're a contributor and not a leader to spearhead these things. So, guess looking back on what you know now, taking your career, taking all the SEO and deliverability elements into Ashby and making this kind of web, so to speak, of how things all fit together, because it's daunting. Right, let's say how it is. It can become overwhelming to say, let's go do all of that. What would you say could get someone a higher success story? One simple thing that then they can start building upon and showing the founders or showing the teams around them that, okay, this is something we should invest in. Because again, when we talk about talent, sometimes we have to prove far more before people start really listening to it. So what would you say is a kind of a good place for someone to start?
Accuracy of application. That's where everything starts. Doesn't matter whether the candidate is sourced, a referral, or a true applicant. Right? That job description and the alignment of that person to it is the biggest part of the battle. It's a building block of quality of hire. It's a building block of talent density. It's a building block of improved pass-through rates. It's a building block of faster time to fill. All of these buzzwords and things that people are talking about all the time anchor back to how do you work smarter as a recruiter, as a TA professional, and driving accuracy of application is that first point. I mentioned it earlier, natural language of job title. If you use a job title that is true to what the work is, it will have so much more impact than if you don't. Couple of quick stories. We once had a job at Google called a GPS learning navigation specialist. And I'm walking past a resume reviewer. That was what they did for a living. And they're like, Jim, can I borrow you for a second? I was like, sure. I've got all of these incredible machine learning software engineers who've got this geo background for this job. And I don't understand why they're applying for it, but they look really good. Can they be used somewhere else? And I'm looking at it. Okay, GPS learning navigation specialist. And they've got geo machine learning map type software engineers applying. It's like, okay, what is this job? Then, well, it's a training program coordinator. GPS was Google People Services. Learning navigation was the name of the L&D department. And this person was basically booking rooms for training programs. And you've got machine learning software engineers applying for the job because GPS to them is global positioning. You get the machine learning and so on. So we changed the title to training coordinator, and then we got training coordinators apply for the job. It's really simple stuff. At Full Story, the company I was at between Google and Ashby, session replay. So I was able to actually see the activity of candidates landing on our career site and see the heat maps in the activity. Over 70% of the applicants spent less than 7 seconds on our career page before hitting apply. And the only thing that their eyes had seen was the job title.
So they're deciding whether or not to go for it based on the title.
The other 30% read the job description and went off to the benefits page and started to look into the company and culture pages and so on. But over 70% of people's job title was the only thing that attracted them. Now, I couldn't go further down the line to see which of those two groups of people were the ones we hired, but job title is the number one critical piece for application accuracy. And then going into more detail, like why you shouldn't apply for the job, those are things that we've really driven. So the time you spend doing resume review, to the recruiter example, I was looking at 500 recruiters, not 200 recruiters and 300 other people who wanted to break into recruiting. Time well spent for me. For a software engineer, for a salesperson, whatever it happens to be, super accurate application levels, good use of my time, but it's that building block. You make that change, you see this change, you can then measure it with pass-through rates, measure it with other key metrics. Then you go to the next level and you start to create more information or do more of the SEO pieces. Every piece is a building block. You get incremental gains and you start to see the compound impact of those incremental gains over time. And all of a sudden, you've just evolved how you do TA across the course of a number of months and had dramatic impact. I do have papers that I've written. There are podcasts and so on, all on Ashby's website that illustrate this kind of stuff and resources out there. Like I say, we build publicly and we will happily share all of these concepts and processes.
I was going to say, to wrap this up, if somebody does want to find you, this up a bit further, have a deeper discussion, where's the best place that they can find you?
LinkedIn. Just be aware that I'm going to be offline for a little bit. I have my 5th child due in 3 weeks' time, so I'm going to be on for a little period of time.
Well, Jim, I really appreciate you, taking us through, your career from Google to now and talking about the differences clearly, and I guess illuminating a bit more around what we can do, the simple things that can make big differences, and proving that you don't have to have Google brand behind you. You can do this from a 60-person startup that not many people at that point knew, and really create something that now a lot of people in this field know. So I really appreciate it. I wish you and, of course, your family and the little ones arrival the very best. And I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Eden. Thanks for having me.
No worries.